So my name is Gieri Hinnen. I am the head of global cargo sales at Swiss WorldCargo, Swiss's air freight division. And I have the pleasure to introduce to you the American Swiss Foundation and our two main participants today, Bob and Lorenzo. So to start with, the American Swiss Foundation. The American Swiss Foundation was founded in 1945 with a mission to deepen the friendship between Switzerland and the US. And this historic friendship dates back over 2 centuries when the two countries were called the two sister republics, which shared democratic values and shared values such as liberty, the rule of law, and free enterprise, values that are shared until today. And for over 75 years, the Swiss American Foundation has connected Swiss and American leaders through a wide range of inspirational programs. And the foundation focuses on young leaders that shape public policy and opinion and businesses in the years to come. And the main program of the American Swiss Foundation is the Young Leaders Conference, held annually in Switzerland since 1990. And so the alumni of the past 32 conferences now number 1,400 young leaders in both countries. So this is in very short the American Swiss Foundation who is organizing and hosting this program today. And my personal connection to the American Swiss Foundation is that I had the pleasure of participating in the Young Leaders Conference in 2019, an experience that was absolutely great and that I'm very thankful for. So with this short introduction of the foundation, I would introduce to you our two main participants, Lorenzo and Bob. So to start with Lorenzo, he is currently the head of cargo at Swiss WorldCargo, Swiss's air freight division. He has been in this role since 2021, so he joined in the midst of the Corona madness and has successfully steered Swiss WorldCargo ever since. And he has been with Swiss since 2013, where he was before the head of Western Switzerland, where he successfully repositioned Swiss as the premium carrier in the Geneva market. And before joining Swiss, he was with another great company in Switzerland, Nestlé, where he held various positions, his last position being the Chief Commercial Officer of Nestlé Waters Switzerland. And Lorenzo holds a diploma of the École Hôtelière de Lausanne, and he originally joined the tourism industry at Montreux-Vevey Tourist Office. And in terms of his work at Swiss WorldCargo, next to high returns, he has put sustainability very much at the heart of Swiss WorldCargo, a fact that I think is absolutely great. With this, so this is Lorenzo. And then I would introduce Bob as well. Bob Giuffra is the chair of the American Swiss Foundation since 2016, and he is also the co-chair of Sullivan & Cromwell, an American multinational law firm headquartered in New York City. And he is an alumni of the 1996 Young Leaders Conference. And next to his law practice, he has also vast government experience. So he was the law clerk to Chief Justice William Rehnquist of the US Supreme Court, and to Judge Ralph Winters of the US Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. In addition, he has been the chief counsel of the US Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, and served in the Reagan White House. And in addition, he has been appointed by governors of both political parties to serve in the New York State government, including a member of the New York State's Commission on Public Integrity and the New York State Ethics Commission. And in his law practice, he focuses on securities, better company, commercial, banking, white-collar criminals, insurance, employment, and tax litigation. So a wide range of fields. And he's a graduate of Yale Law School and Princeton University. So with this very short and hopefully not too fast introduction of the foundation and our two participants, we will move on to the main program. And I would hand over to Bob to open the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gieri. It's really great to be here. And I wanted to start off by thanking our friends from Swiss. Swiss has been the lead airline for the only airline for the American Swiss Foundation since Faith Whittlesey started our Young Leaders program in 1990. And so literally since 1990, every Young Leaders Conference, we've been flying our young leaders from the United States to Switzerland on Swiss. And, you know, we literally would not be able to have the conference without Swiss. I always take Swiss, and I was joking before we got on. Once I actually made the mistake of taking Delta, and there was an emergency light bulb that wasn't working on the inside of the plane, and we were delayed 8 hours as I tried to get the part. So I learned my lesson. I really am delighted to have Lorenzo here, and Lorenzo is going to answer a lot of questions for us. We've always wondered what was, under the belly of those big Swiss Air planes when you were flying from New York or to Geneva. But it's really great to be here. So Lorenzo, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you do and what Swiss stage.
Hello and good evening, everybody. I'm very pleased and I'm very honored to be able to join this conversation tonight and share with the audience our thoughts on the state of air freight and on the trade state between the United States of America and Switzerland. To answer your question, Robert, is Swiss WorldCargo is the air freight division of Swiss. So we have developed a business model where we do transport a number of various goods in the holds of our passenger aircrafts. Is what we call in our lingo belly cargo, compared to other operators that would fly freighters. So, ladies and gentlemen, every time we have the pleasure of welcoming you aboard one of our aircrafts, maybe for long haul or short haul flights, there's a very high likelihood that there is some cargo underneath your seats. We have a very comprehensive approach in mind, being a very small carrier, as we operate about 30 long-haul aircrafts, which translates in 25 intercontinental flights a day. We can't compete on volume. And this is something that is very Swiss. As we are small, we tend to build high quality, and we're focusing on cargo that is of high value, of high care, or of high sensitivity. This is where we did build our brand.
Lorenzo, what are some of the more interesting items that you've had that would be in the belly of those Swiss planes? I mean, I would imagine, multi-million-dollar works of art, maybe live animals, currency, secure banknotes. What are some of the interesting things that would be in the belly of one of the Swiss?
Some of the items you mentioned, I would pledge no comment because of discretion issues. But jokes apart, we specialize on pharmaceutical products. So, for example, some of the pharma companies in Switzerland that are also active in the United States, or collaboration between Swiss and American pharma companies, we move pharmaceutical components. To take one example, during the pandemic, we were flying a lot of the COVID vaccines, or parts of what would then become the COVID vaccine. Or we fly live animals, even though not as big as you might think, because we have a height limit.
No giraffes.
No giraffes, because the aircraft, the hold for the cargo is only 1.60 meters. But one famous export product of the United States, of the Maine coast, which is a delightful meal here in Switzerland, would be Maine lobsters. They would fly alive from the coast of Maine to the restaurants in Switzerland. There's also spare parts for the industry, the machine industry exported from Switzerland. You mentioned it before, watches, fashion items. And last but not least, last year we flew almost 550 tons of Swiss chocolate to the United States.
Now, when you took over your current position during the pandemic, that must have been a very difficult time in which to assume a leadership responsibility in an airline business, because the airline business was not doing very well. You couldn't fly planes, and everyone worried about the future of airlines, at least at the short term. The businesses turned around. How did you manage to keep Swiss, going during the pandemic? In terms of, did you literally take out the seats in the planes and just start transporting goods back and forth between the United States and Switzerland and other countries?
Indeed. Maybe coming back to the beginning of your question on how challenging it was for me to take on the freight division of Swiss during the pandemic, I have to say that it was a super steep learning curve, and it was multiple challenges. First of all,
you had come over from Nestle in the water business.
I had come over from Nestle to the airline industry. I did do passenger business for Swiss in Geneva during 8 years, 7.5 years, which in the world of aviation is a rather short time to build experience. And from there, I had the opportunity to take over Swiss WorldCargo. So I was faced with several challenges. One, understand what is air freight and how does it work. Two, take the leadership of a 300 people organization scattered all across the world. So you take on a new job, and your first interaction with your teams is by Zoom. That's your first interaction. And then we had the pressure for the company to be as successful as we could dream of in the cargo business itself to keep Swiss afloat. And the models we have developed with our cargoes during the pandemic did allow, for example, to Swiss to keep on operating its long haul fleet. So we took 3 of our 777s and we did build out the economy class seats, which would massively increase our transport capacity. It wasn't so much to the US, I have to say, because Switzerland was in an urgent need of personal protection equipment, masks, gloves, charlottes, whatever. And this is all very bulky, but very light. So there's no problem to load it into a cabin. So we were going back first return trips to Asia to get those materials. We then started a bit further down the timeline of the pandemic. We were also started to transport vaccines from Europe to South America. But there was one route that has always been open and was the only one we were constantly operating, was the Zurich-Newark, because Newark was open for cargo operations. So we could move very important goods between the two countries. But yeah, it's been demanding, but it's been, I have to say, also super exciting, because I do believe that it's a privilege to being given the chance to learn a new job along your career.
What's the most challenging part of your job now, running the freight business for Swiss?
Well, it depends on what kind of challenges you want to look at. If I look at the state of the industry in general, I think as an industry we have 2 challenges we must tackle. One is digitalization. We are far behind what, for example, is done in the passenger business in terms of digital flows of information. And the second one is sustainability. How can we, as air freight industry, mitigate our environmental impact when flying goods that are of need around the world? That would say is that, say, the industry. Specifically for Swiss is how can Swiss WorldCargo contribute into Swiss's sustainable transformation? What is our participation in our objective of reducing Swiss's CO2 footprint by 50% in 2030 and get to a net zero by 2050, which is a super ambitious target? What can we do? So that would be the challenges. And then you have more short-term challenges that, as Gieri said in his introduction, he's our global sales responsible, and the demand for air freight is currently not at the level where me, in my function as head of cargo, would expect or would like it to have. So our numbers are still very good compared to 19, but not as good as in the pandemic anymore.
To what extent, if you were could you walk through for us, if you had a very high value good, say, that needed to go from Zurich to New York, what would be some of the steps in the process, and would that all be done through digitalization? Like if you had a valuable painting and you wanted to make sure that that valuable painting, made it from Zurich, say, to the Metropolitan Museum in New York City.
This is, let me, maybe I'll take you through the different links of the supply chain. So there is the owner of the painting, which in our lingo, we call the shipper. So that's the entity that wants to move the good. He can't do it on his own, so he needs a forwarder. The freight forwarder will do all the paperwork, customs, taxes, insurance for that specific shipment as a service to the shipper. The freight forwarder will also select the best possible connection depending on the wishes of the shipper so that that piece of art arrives in New York when the shipper needs it to be in New York. Most likely, as we are very well known for this kind of high care shipments, he will select Swiss WorldCargo. We will then create what is called an airway bill. You can imagine it's the ticket for the shipment. The shipment will then start moving physically from the warehouse of the shipper into our warehouse at the airport. It will be very carefully loaded into the aircraft, flown to New York, unloaded, and at the end displayed in either the owner's house or, if he has a bit of a cultural sponsorship, in one of the numerous museums enjoyable in New York. On the digitalization piece, you got to understand that for that shipment, that specific art of work, you're probably looking at several dozens of pages of paper that are required to move that good. And there, in terms of digitalization, we could totally automate that flow. And when you travel, Bob, you need your passport. Depending on where you go, you might need a visa and maybe some vaccination certificates. And that's it. For moving a painting from Zurich to New York, you need to have tax declarations, the proof of ownership, the history of the year. And that is only for the painting. Imagine when you move food or you move pharmaceuticals and you have to align the regulations of the Swiss medics and the FDA. I give you one example where we sometimes, it's a very simple example, but I was born October 2nd. So in the US, it's 10:02. Correct?
Yes.
My country, this would mean that I would have been born on February 2nd, on 10th of February. So just that regulation, and this kind of, it's a very small example, but one of the things we should be working on to make trade more effective, make trade more easy, make trade more efficient, is aligning regulations. Let me give you another example. The US Customs has a declaration system, which is called, now I have there is this declaration system where the forwarders and the shippers need to upload the data of the goods shipped to the US so that the customs can have an idea what is coming in, what will be the taxes, that we need special controls and so on, which is very nice. Okay. The European Union has introduced the same system. Now, do you think they could discuss together and apply the same standards? No. So now
all it does is increase the cost of shipping the goods and increases the risk of error.
And the error risk behind it. So this is the kind of things that make trade difficult. And in the middle, thanks, or the shippers, the owners can be grateful to the work done by the freight forwarders and by the airlines to mitigate all that complexity for them.
You know, just to talk about the importance of trade. Now, I believe the U.S. and Switzerland are either, you know, U.S. is either the number one or number two largest trading partner for Switzerland, and is obviously a critical destination for Swiss exports and direct investments. And we love that in the United States. There's no better country for the United States to be close to than our friends in Switzerland. How do the connections between the United States and Switzerland impact your business, and how can they be improved? I mean, for example, we talk about a free trade agreement between the United States and Switzerland as being something that would increase the already strong economic ties between the U.S. and Switzerland.
And that's my very personal position. I'm in favor of free trade agreements because they simplify everybody's work of connecting economies. But maybe to give you the importance for Swiss and Swiss WorldCargo of our collaboration or our links to the US. We serve 7 destinations in the United States: Chicago, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Newark, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, and Miami, plus 2 other destinations with Edelweiss, which is Denver and Tampa. That are the all year long destinations. Then we have a number
all good places to go in the United
all
States.
good places. Then we have a number of seasonal destinations, and we also serve destinations in Canada and in South America. By March, April next year, we will open services to Washington, also direct from Zurich. But each one of those destinations is served between 6 and 7 times a week. So we're around 80 flights to and from the US per week. This is the largest part of our network. And it is very important to us also in the cargo business that we have good relationships so that we can strengthen that, and that Swiss WorldCargo can provide its contribution to the collaboration. 2/3 of the value of Switzerland's exports into the world, 2/3 of the value leaves the country by plane.
That makes sense, though, when you think about the kind of products that Switzerland is making. Switzerland is making expensive, innovative products that are valuable, and you're not going to just stick on a freighter. Plus, you know, Switzerland is a landlocked country, so it would make sense. But when you actually think about it a little bit, you know, we always talk about building bridges, but what you are is really you're building that bridge between the U.S., Switzerland, and other countries. That's so critical for Swiss trade, and you know, you saw that during the pandemic and going forward. What are some of the things that, you know, that politicians on both sides of the Atlantic can do to increase the amount of trade between the U.S. and Switzerland?
Well, that's a bit of a tricky question, because it has, in my opinion, so many dimensions on the politics. Because are we just looking at Switzerland's own politics and Switzerland's own interests of exporting as many goods as possible? Are we looking at the United States politics in opening their economy to the world, or protecting the economy of the United States, which is Switzerland is by no means comparable in terms of size of the economy. But I think that I do personally always believe that, first of all, it takes trust to work together. So our politicians should continue to build a trustful relationship between the two countries. And maybe not so much at the super top of the politicians, so presidents and our federal council, but the ones that stay a bit longer, that maybe they're not looking only at 4-year terms or 5-year terms, but creating a trustful relationship. And I think there we are already making a very strong program. We have a very good foundation. I think it will also, they could also focus on simplifying and accelerating not only economical exchange, but also intellectual exchange. In Switzerland and in the US, we have the pleasure, no, the privilege of having among the best brains in the world, in the best universities or of the world. And I hear some of them tell me, it's so complicated to get a visa in the US or complicated to get a visa in Switzerland. How can we create more common intelligence for the longer run? This is a bit a visionary thing. But
are there roadblocks to the even just the shipping of goods between the US and Switzerland that really could be, brought down, that would really make a difference in terms of increasing the amount of trade between the two countries?
There is always roadblocks.
You're kind of on the front lines when you think about it, because whether the thing gets
for example,
customs.
there is, for example, taxes on some Swiss food, not to name it Swiss cheese, that puts the Swiss cheese it's off price to any American local produced cheese. Ditto with Swiss wine.
It's a lot better in my experience.
Yeah, but that is kind of things where I do understand from an American perspective, you want to protect your home market, but from our perspective, we say like, hey, it's not like I mentioned before the 500 tons of chocolate we've been able to export to the US. It's probably 500 tons of chocolate is probably a day of consumption of chocolate in the US. It doesn't make a big difference for the American economy, but makes a big difference for us. So I think, this custom levies and custom barriers that are built sometimes with political backgrounds, because you have the voters that are this could help accelerating or further enhancing the trade. Could.
You mentioned before sustainability. What is Swiss doing to meet those ambitious sustainability targets? How does an airline try to become a net zero carbon airline?
So there's a number of, we have this multi-pillar strategy. The most effective activity or action we do on a shorter term is fleet renewal. In the last 10 years, we invested over 8 billion Swiss francs to renew our fleet, and we're about to start an additional 1.5 billion investment program to replace some of our long-haul aircrafts. Every new generation aircraft emits 20% CO2 less than the generation before. So there it is very, very concrete what we can do, but it takes massive investments. Also on the technology side, we have now our 777 fleet is equipped with AeroShark. So you got to imagine it is shark skin on the aircraft.
Wow.
Robert, not the real shark. Huh? It's an imitation of the shark skin. And because the sharks are so water dynamic, the skin is also super aerodynamic, and it the emissions of our 12 Boeing 777s fleet by a bit more than 15,000 tons of CO2 per year. Wow. 15,000 tons, which is, the number looks very big, but it's in relation to our total emissions, it is a few percentage points, but it's going into the right direction. So these things we can do that are very concrete and on the short term. On the longer term, we're working very hard to optimize our flight operations, flying the shortest distances possible, flying at the right altitude so that you can catch the wind, and the wind pushes you a bit so you burn a bit. Yeah, but even, saving 1 kilo per fuel per passenger per mile times 19 million passengers per year makes a difference. This is the good thing about aviation. You're immediately in big numbers. Very specifically on a Swiss WorldCargo side, we've partnered up with another company called Swiss Airtainer, and they have developed a new self-sustained cooling container for the pharma industry that is 250 kilos lighter than anybody else in the industry, any of its competitors. Every container is a quarter-ton lighter. So with the same payload in the container, you emit less CO2. On the longer run, the future of the industry is what is called sustainable aviation fuels, is instead of burning mineral fuel, so petrol, we will burn fuel. First wave is fuel that is coming from bio-waste that you transform into fuel. And the next generation is, for example, will be for Swiss, is what is the collaboration we have with a Swiss company called Synhelion, where we will be absorbing CO2 out of the atmosphere. You put it into a box, you add a lot of heat, you add a lot of pressure and water, and on the other side comes out with some transformations, jet fuel. If the heat and the energy come from solar panels, which is the case of Synhelion, you're almost in a closed circuit of recycling your own carbon emissions. So you're not adding any additional kilo of carbon into the system when you fly. That is a bit on the longer run. You're probably talking 2035 to have it on an industrial scale. Plus a lot of small things that make a difference on the long run because it adds up. For example, instead of using wood to build our pallets with the goods for getting into the aircraft, we now use recycled cardboard pallets that are also, you can use them, then you shred them, you re-mold them, and it's a closed circuit, always the same cardboard. Again, a few kilos there, a few kilos there, a few kilos there, you're lighter, you burn less fuel. Your CO2 emission is slightly reduced.
That's really great to hear. So we've sort of come to the end of our time, and I really wanted to thank you and thank Swiss for all you do for the American Swiss Foundation. Any last words you'd like to sort of pass on to our audience?
Well, first of all, do not hesitate to fly Swiss when you come over.
I learned that lesson the one time I took Delta.
When you come over to Switzerland or to Europe, we have a fantastic hub in Zurich that will also take you beyond Switzerland, as well as
my favorite airport, Zurich Airport, in the whole world. I think it's my favorite airport, and I particularly love taking the train from the plane when they have all the cows and stuff.
And then, if I think back about the raison d'être of the American Swiss Foundation and my comment on building trust, as trust is, in my opinion, the base for any partnership, may it be commercial, political, or your private life. I wish that we keep on collaborating within the foundation, that we keep on nurturing young leaders that come across with those values, so that we can keep on building trust between the two communities and have a successful trade also in the future.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in person on October 10th at the New York Stock Exchange. We're having a big event honoring Christoph Beck, who's the chairman and CEO of Ecolab. So I look forward to seeing everyone who can make it on October 10th at the New York Stock Exchange. And again, thank you all for your attention. And thank you, Lorenzo. Just great program, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you all very much.